Welcome to the Utah Retirement System's webinar series. While this webinar has been pre-recorded, the information is still relevant. Please see the description below for links to the different sections within the video and other helpful information. We hope you find this webinar to be a useful resource in your retirement planning.
We're going to talk about the Tier 2 hybrid option. This is the retirement benefit that includes a pension as well as a small contribution to a 401k. First question for everybody is, how many years of service do you have? You just go ahead and take a moment and respond to that. That would be great. Okay, based on the responses, thank you for responding. Looks like the majority of the people listening today have 0 to 4 years of service. And we do have one person who has over 8 years of service. So congratulations. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's move on. All right, a retirement. Many of us will have 4 sources of retirement income. We will have a pension from Utah Retirement Systems, Social Security, income from savings plans. Of course, this is money that we've saved on our own into one of the UR savings plans or an outside plan, and then other. Another may include pensions from other employers, passive income like rental income, things like that. Today we're going to focus on the pension part of that pie. So a pension, for those of you who aren't familiar, is comparable to like Social Security. It provides you, when you become eligible, with a fixed monthly income. Once you become eligible to apply for and receive the benefit. The payment that you'll receive is based on your years of service and the salary you've earned while with the URS employer. There are different options, payout options to provide. You can have it provide a continuing benefit to a surviving spouse. And then, of course, once you start receiving the pension benefit, you can receive annual cost of living increases up to 2.5%. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Let's talk about eligibility. When am I eligible to apply for the pension benefit? In order to receive the full pension benefit, or be eligible to receive the full pension benefit, you have to be 65 years old and have at least 4 years of service, or you can be any age and have at least 35 years of service. So age 65 with at least 4 years, or any age with at least 35 years of service. It's possible to qualify for the retirement benefit prior to age 65 with less than 35 years of service. However, your pension benefit will be reduced by an early age reduction. You are eligible to apply for the pension benefit at age 62 as long as you have 10 years of service, or at age 60 as long as you have 20 years of service. But remember, if you apply for the benefit before age 65 with less than 35 years of service, the pension benefit will be reduced by an early age reduction. The early age reductions in the Tier 2 system are, if you retire, as we just discussed before, you could be eligible at age 60 or at age 62. You can see the reduction. So if somebody were to retire at age 60 or to apply for the benefit at age 60 and they had the required 20 years of service, their pension benefit would be reduced by almost 37%. If they were age 62 and had the required minimum 10 years of service, their pension benefit would be reduced by 24.5%. You can see that even somebody who applies for the pension benefit at age 64 with at least 4 years of service will have a reduction of, at age 64 with at least 10 years of service will have a reduction benefit of at least 9%. That's important to understand because certainly if you're thinking about retiring at age 60, you might want to consider delaying the benefit, applying for the benefit to avoid an early age reduction or purchasing years of service. And we'll talk about that, how you can do that in a minute here. This is the formula that we use to calculate your pension benefit. So if you're curious what to expect, you can simply plug in your anticipated years of service, multiply that by 1.5%, and then multiply that number by the average of your 5 highest years salary. And again, this is with the URS eligible employer. We call the average of your 5 highest years your final average salary. Now, these don't have to be your last 5. They don't have to be a consecutive 5. They just have to be your 5 highest years with a URS eligible employer. Years of service, we track that out to the 3rd decimal place. So every pay period, your employer sends in a contribution to URS and you receive service credit. So it's not necessary to work a certain length of time or something to get a full year of service. You can retire with partial years of service. You plug the numbers into that formula and that will give you an idea of your basic yearly pension benefit. At retirement, you're going to have a choice between 6 different payout options. This is the big decision that you'll be required to make when you apply for the pension benefit. Quickly or just briefly, let me go through these different benefits and explain them to you. With option 1, this is a member benefit only. The member would receive their calculated benefit every month for as long as they lived, but the pension benefit dies upon the member's death. There is no surviving spouse benefit. I'm going to ignore payout option 2 for just a minute. I'll come back to it. Next, I'm going to talk about payout options 3, 4, 5, and 6. These all have a surviving spouse benefit. And you'll notice that with the pension, the payout options 3, 4, 5, and 6, the only person who can receive the benefit upon your death is the spouse that you are married to at the time that you apply for the benefit. Under payout option 3, your surviving spouse would continue to receive 100% of your benefit after your death. Under payout option 4, your surviving spouse would continue to receive 50% of your pension benefit after your death. With payout option 5, your spouse, 5 is very much like 3 with one additional feature. Payout option 5, your surviving spouse will receive 100% of your benefit upon your death. However, if your spouse passes first, you contact URS, make us aware of your spouse's passing, and your benefit will revert back to payout option 1, the member benefit. With payout option 6, 6 is similar to 4. With 6, your surviving spouse will continue to receive 50% of your pension benefit upon your death. However, if your spouse passes first, the member can contact URS, make them aware of their spouse's passing, and the member's benefit will revert to payout option 1. Now, let's talk about payout option 2. And the reason I didn't talk about this is that currently payout option 2 is not available to anyone. And the reason for that is that we have the Tier 2 hybrid system has never required the employee to make a contribution to fund the pension benefit. You may recall when the benefit was explained to you, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, that your employer makes a contribution equal to 10% of your salary to fund this benefit. Every year, the pension department determines how much of that 10% they need to keep the pension funded. We call that number the pension rate. Whenever the pension rate is less than 10%, the difference goes into a 401k or into your 401k. However, there is a possibility that the pension rate could be greater than 10%. If that happens, the employee will be required to make a payroll contribution to fund the pension. So for example, the pension rate is 11%. The employer will contribute 10%. The employee would be required to contribute 1% to make up the shortfall. Whenever the employee is required to make a contribution to fund the pension, we track those contributions. They're tracked under your name. It's tracked as a contributory balance. And under payout option 2, if you have a contributory balance, that contributory balance upon your death can pass to your heirs. This is the only option where a benefit under the pension system can pass to someone other than a surviving spouse. Now, this Tier 2 system's been in place since July 1st, 2011. The system's never been contributory, meaning we've never required an employee to make a contribution. So at the present, nobody has a contributory balance. And so for that reason, Tier 2 is not in play. Projections going forward, we do not anticipate the system becoming contributory, but in the event that it does, that would be an option that's available to you when you apply for the pension benefit. So that's the 6 payout options. I hope that explanation helps you to understand this. Again, you won't make that decision until you apply for the benefit. So for many of us, that may be many years down the road. Let's look at a quick example. In this example, we're going to assume a final average salary of $40,000 a year. We're going to assume that the member has 35 years of service. So if you recall from the eligibility, that means they are eligible to receive the full pension benefit without an early age reduction. The member is age 65 and their spouse is age 62. If we plug those numbers into the formula that we just reviewed, you'll see that the member's benefit under payout option 1 is $1,750 a month. The member would, if they chose option 1, they would receive that benefit every month for as long as they lived, but upon their death, that would be the end of the benefit. Now, I'm not going to review 2. You remember the explanation, but that's currently not in play. But you can see the numbers for 3 through 6. And remember, with 3 and 5, your spouse gets 100% of your benefit. And with 4 and 6, your spouse receives 50% of your benefit after you pass. You'll notice that the payout numbers are lower for 3, 4, 5, and 6 than they are for 1. And that's because it has a surviving spouse component. The surviving spouse, or the reduction in the member benefit, if you choose 3 through 6, will depend on the member's date of birth, the spouse's date of birth, and the member's age when they apply for the benefit. All of the actuaries take all of that into consideration when they calculate the reduction in the pension benefit or the member's benefit which includes a surviving spouse benefit. If we compare 3 to 5, you'll notice both 3 and 5 provide the surviving spouse with 100% of the member's benefit after the member passes. But remember, with 5, if the spouse dies first, the member's benefit reverts to payout option 1. You'll notice that the benefit, if we compare 3 and 5, the payout benefit is slightly less with 5 compared to 3, and that's because that payout option includes the option to revert back to 1. Hope that helps you to understand the payout options. All right, next question. Oh, what pension payout option do you think you will choose upon retiring? Go ahead and take a minute and just answer that. All right. So 47% are answering payout option 1. We do have one person choosing payout option 2, but remember, payout option 2 currently isn't available because nobody has been required to contribute to the pension system. And then payout options 3, 5, and I don't know are all about equal. And that's fair, right? I don't know. You don't know what your marital status will be. You don't know what the health of your partner will be. You don't know what your retirement income needs will be in the future, and so it's fair to say you're not sure because things can change between now and then. Now, I showed you the basic benefit. Thanks for taking a minute to answer that question. I showed you the basic benefit formula. There's also an online tool. We have several online calculators that you can access if you want to estimate your pension benefit. The calculator to estimate the pension benefit is called the Retirement Benefit Estimate Calculator. You just go to the urs.org website, click on calculators, and then click on the link to that, and it will take you to an online calculator. You just enter the information that's requested, and it will provide you with a pension estimate, including payout options 1 through 6. Pretty straightforward on how to use that calculator. Recommend get on there, experiment with it, make sure that you're comfortable with how to do it, and then get an idea of what you can anticipate as far as a pension benefit. This will go a long way in helping you to determine just how much you need to save in order to meet your retirement goals. How do you boost your retirement benefit? Well, there's really no secrets. You either work longer or you earn more money. Remember, in the formula, we use years of service and average of your 5 high years salary to determine the pension benefit. So to increase the pension benefit, you have to increase those numbers. Working longer means just adding years of service and earning more money. Well, you can do that through promotions, taking on more responsibility. This is a time where you can think about, do you want to go back, get that master's degree or finish your undergraduate degree, something like that, something that will increase your earning potential. There is a third way that you can increase your pension benefit, and that is by purchasing service credit. There is a handout online that you can review to get more details on that, but let me just cover the 3 basic methods of purchasing service credit. The first method is if you have forfeited years of service in the pension system. Now, tier 2, that won't kick in, or shouldn't kick in, or if it does, it would be very rare. It would mean that you were in the URS system, you left, and you forfeited those years of service. I can't currently think of any way that somebody would be able to do that. The second way that you can purchase service credit in the URS system is if you have service credit in another public system. So say you were a school teacher in Idaho or Arizona, and they have a, a retirement benefit system. You can transfer those years in that other system to the URS system. You are required to forfeit the years in that other system in order to purchase them in the URS system. This would also apply if you worked for the federal government and have years of service in that system. You can transfer those years of service to the URS system. This would include military service if you qualify for a military pension. Now, if you have questions about the cost to transfer these years of service, I recommend you give our pension department a call, and they can talk with you more about that and actually help you calculate what it would cost for you to purchase those years of service. Keep in mind, as a rough rule of thumb, it will cost you about half of your final average salary to purchase 1 year of service. So in our example, the individual had a final average salary of $40,000 a year. If they wanted to purchase service, they would be looking at approximately $20,000 to purchase 1 year of service. So the cost to purchase service increases as your final average salary in the URS system increases. There's one last way that you can purchase service credit, and this is purchasing future service credit. Once you hit age 65, and as long as you have 5 years of service, or once you obtain 30 years of service, you can purchase up to 5 years of service. We call this purchasing future service. Oftentimes people will purchase future service to avoid an early age reduction. You'll recall in our example, let's say we have somebody who has 30 years of service, but they're age 60. Well, we know from the early age, we know from eligibility they'll be subject to an early age reduction, and that reduction is close to 40% of their benefit. However, that person could purchase 5 years of future service, increasing their years of service to 35, thereby eliminating the early age reduction, and they would be able to retire with a full pension benefit even though they were only age 60. Because of the cost and because it can be expensive, this is something you want. If you're thinking about doing that, if your goal is to retire at age 60 but you'll have less than 35 years of service, you're going to need to start saving for that now. You can use tax-deferred savings balances like your 401k, 457, or traditional IRA to purchase future service. All right, earlier I talked about, I talked briefly about how the contribution that your employer makes to fund this benefit, the pension rate, which thereby affects how much goes into your 401k. For this July, from July 2019 to July of 2020, the pension rate is 8.97%. Remember, your employer will always contribute 10%. The pension rate is subtracted from that. And whenever the pension rate is less than 10%, the difference goes into your 401k. So for the next year, everybody who's in the Tier 2 hybrid will be receiving 1.03% of their salary into their 401k. And again, remember, this number changes every July. In the education and planning group, we think it is reasonable to assume that the pension rate will average around 9%, which means that the 401k contribution will also average about 1%. But remember, that number does change, and it is possible that the pension rate can be greater than 10%. We certainly hope that never happens, but it is a possibility. For today, we're not going to talk about the 401k component. It's enough to say that your 401k is a tax-deferred savings plan. Certainly, you cannot rely only on your employer's contribution to provide you with sufficient funds at retirement. It's going to be important that you make contributions. But we have other education products available online that you can use to learn more about the retirement savings plans and the investment options. We've got videos. We've got an upcoming webinar called Stay on Target. We've got another webinar called Gaze into Your Retirement Future, and then finally a webinar called Finding Your Perfect Recipe for Investing. All of these will talk about how to save and the investment options that are available to you. We also have videos on the website, and we also have an online calculator for the savings plans that you can use that's very helpful. At retirement, when you apply for the pension benefit, you will be eligible to choose retiree life insurance. These are minimum amounts. As you can see, you can choose $3,000, $5,000, or $10,000. You can choose these for you and or your spouse. The premiums are deducted from your monthly pension check, and your cost will never increase. However, you have to make this election at retirement, and if you opt out at any point, you cannot opt back in. So it's one of these things you have to opt in at retirement, and if you want to keep it, you cannot opt out. And again, it's available for you and or your spouse. These are the current monthly premiums. You can see the amount currently, the premium amount that it costs for the different insurance amounts for those applying for the benefit now. Again, this is a decision you'll make when you apply for the pension benefit. What if you die before retiring? Well, there are some death benefits in the hybrid system. First, and this is an active member death benefit, meaning you have to be actively employed with the URS eligible employer at the time of your death to receive this benefit. If you qualify for this benefit, we will cut a check for 75% of your highest annual salary, and those funds will be divided between the beneficiaries that you have designated. This happens one time. So if you're making $60,000 a year, we'll cut a check for $45,000 that will be divided among your beneficiaries. And again, this happens once. And remember, this is an active member death benefit. There's a second benefit that doesn't require you to be actively employed at the time of your death. However, it does require that you have been married at least 6 months and have at least 15 years of service. Now, at the time of your death, regardless of whether you're employed with the URS eligible employer, if you qualify for the pension benefit by virtue of your age and years of service, your spouse can apply for the pension benefit and will receive the pension benefit according to payout option 3. But let's say you have at least 15 years of service, but you don't qualify in terms of age. You haven't reached, age 62 or age 65. Let's say you're 40 years old at the time of your death, but you have 15 years of service. Your spouse is eligible to receive a pension benefit. The way that benefit is calculated depends on your years of service and your salary, because we simply plug those numbers into the formula. Now, if you have 15 to 19 years of service, your spouse will receive 1/3 of the calculated benefit. If you have 20 to 24 years of service at the time of your death, your spouse will receive 2/3 of your pension benefit. And if you have 25 years or more service at the time of your death, so imagine somebody joins a URS eligible employer at 18. By the time for them to achieve 25 years of service, they could be 43 years of age. At age 43, they could, with 25 years of service, their spouse would be eligible to receive 100% of their pension benefit. I've met with members who have had spouses who have died, and they've told me stories about how this death benefit was the difference between them being able to make it financially after a spouse's death. But again, remember, you have to have been married to your spouse at least 6 months and have at least 15 years of service at the time of your death. Now let's talk about steps to retirement. I realize this may not apply to many of us in this group. Typically, if we're in Tier 2, we may be younger. The system hasn't been around long enough that we've been able to achieve the minimum 10 years of service if we wanted to retire before age 65. But nevertheless, there may be few of us that this applies to. So steps to retirement. First, before I go through that, how many years, question is, how many years do you have until you plan on retiring? All right, we do have a few. We have a few people who will be retiring in the next 5 to 10 years, but the biggest, approximately half of our group, is looking at 21 to 30 years before they'll be eligible to, or until they plan on retiring. And that's sort of what we see, right? Because people who are in the Tier 2 system just joined the system in the last 8 years and generally are younger in age. But for those of you planning on the next 0 to 5 years, some of you may be thinking about in the next year, let's cover these steps to retirement. First, call URS 2 to 3 years prior to your planned retirement date. Call our pension department and request a pension estimate. At that point, they'll do a soft audit of your record. They'll look to make sure that there are no errors in your years of service, and they'll provide you with an estimate of your benefit based on your planned retirement date. Remember, the pension is effective in terms of calculation on either the 1st or 16th of the month. The only requirement for you is that your last day of work has to be prior to the 1st or 16th of the month. If you work the 2nd of the month, then the first day you would be eligible to receive the pension would be the 16th. This also applies if you work, say you work shift work and you work until 2 a.m., say on the second day or on the first day of the month, that would push your retirement date back to the 16th. So your last day has to be the day before the 1st or 16th of the month. Once you get within 3 months of your planned retirement date, call the pension department and make an appointment or request an application packet. If you'd like to meet with one of our pension advisors, you can make the appointment and they'll help you fill out the paperwork, or you can just request the application, fill out the enclosed paperwork, and just mail that back. We will need several documents when you apply for the pension benefit. First, we'll need your birth certificate. We'll need your spouse's birth certificate if you're applying for payout option 3 through 6. We'll also need your marriage certificate and a voided check. And we only want copies, right? We don't want your originals, just copies. We need the voided check, by the way, to be able to set your pension up for direct deposit. There'll be a form in the packet where you'll provide us with your routing number and account number, but we still need that voided check. It's About 6 months prior to your planned retirement, it's a good time to look and make sure that you have these documents. If you don't, it'll give you time to request them from the state. These are the forms that you'll need to complete. Of course, the application where you'll choose the payout option. You'll have to fill out a W-4P, which is similar to the W-4 you complete when you start with a new employer. That's where you claim your exemptions, and based on your exemptions, claimed exemptions, URS will make the appropriate tax withholdings for you. You'll fill out a beneficiary form, and then finally the direct deposit form so that we can send the pension check directly to your financial institution. It is possible to receive a paper check. We don't recommend it, and you will be charged $20 a month to receive a paper check. We're really encouraging people to do direct deposit, the EFT function. Remember that after you make or after your last day worked, it could be up to 90 days before you'll receive your first pension check. It is, when you do receive it, it'll be retroactive back to your retirement date, and the pension check is paid out on the last business day of each month when you'll receive it in your financial institution. Will depend on how quickly your financial institution clears their EFT deposits. Every year you'll get a cost of living adjustment capped at 2.5%. It's just based on the consumer price index rate of inflation for that year. If you retire in February, you'll get your COLA every February. If you retire in May, every May, and so on, capped at 2.5%. This is just a history looking back the last 5 years on the COLA. You can see it's probably averaged something around 1.8% or so. We've been in a period of relatively low inflation, so we've not seen inflation greater than 2.5%. So the cost of living adjustments have met inflation. A couple of things to consider. Your pension is subject to federal and state income taxes. Of course, if you move to a state without a state income tax, you will not be required. We will not withhold state income taxes. You can change your withholdings at any time by filling out a new W-4P. Let's say you claim your exemptions and you're uncomfortable with the amount being withheld. You can complete a second form. And rather than receiving a W-2, you're going to receive a 1099-R, which will show your total payouts and the withholding for state and federal, and you'll use that when filing your income taxes at the end of the year. Next question. After I retire, I can return to work with a public employer in Utah. Take a minute to answer that. You can see we've got a couple of different. All right, let's cover the post-retirement rules to employment. Most people, by the way, answered true. I can return to work after 1 year full-time with benefits. And that is correct. Also, some people answered true. I can return to work part-time after 60 days with no benefits. That's also true. Remember, if you return to work immediately, part-time or full-time, before 60 days, we will cancel your pension benefit, and if you have received any pension benefit, you'll be required to repay that. So it's important that you understand these post-retirement rules. So if you go back to a URS eligible employer within 60 days of receiving your pension or applying, your effective date, your retirement check is canceled. You'll have to repay anything you've received. You will earn additional service credit if it's in a URS eligible position. However, these new years of service will require a separate vesting period of 2 years. If you return to a URS eligible employer after 60 days, but within 12 months, you can continue to receive your pension check. The position must be non-benefited, and currently the salary is limited to the lesser of $16,743 or half of your final average salary. So for most of us, our income will be limited at around that $16,743. You can't earn over that amount, or you'll be get uh, sideways with the pension department and be required to return any payments, pension payments if you receive. The amount that you can receive, by the way, indexes up every year. So it's important that if you're considering returning to employment after 60 days, but within 12 months, that you talk with the pension department and make sure that the salary you're being paid will not exceed uh, the minimum amounts, or the maximum amounts rather. Finally, if you return to work after 12 months, you can continue to receive your retirement check, or you can cancel your retirement check and accrue new service credit. After 12 months, you can return to a benefited position. You can earn whatever you want, but if you continue to receive your pension check, you will not earn additional years of service. The only way to earn the additional years of service is to cancel the pension check. All right, so hopefully we provided you with the information that you need to determine the pension portion of your uh, retirement income pie. Remember at the beginning we looked at an income pie that was divided into 4 pieces. And the pension is just one of those pieces. Of course, Social Security, savings, and outside retirement sources would be the 4th. I encourage you to take some time today and calculate your pension piece of the pie.